just a quick little walkthrough of the vocab that is continuing to pop up in Chapter 30. So we start off with a happy little first conjugation verb here, delecto, delectare, delectavi, delectatus, to please or delight. So if you are transported by delight, you might experience delectation, or something might be delectable if it is particularly delightful. Then we have supplico, supplicare, supplicavi, supplicatus, which takes the dative to beg or to pray to, which similar things. So if you pray to a god, you might, I might deo supplico. I pray to the god. Pretty simple there. Just remember that it's to them, so it takes a dative. Then we have a third conjugation. We have arcesso, arcessere, arcessivi, arcessitus, to summon. No really great English derivatives there either. And then we have an old friend, gero, gerere, gessi, gestus, to wage, manage, or conduct. We've seen this in the sense of bellum gerere, to wage war before, but now we have it also used with any old personal pronoun, is to behave yourself. So you can, if I behave myself well, I would say, or someone behaves themselves well, they would say bene gerere. Well, you would have to conjugate this, of course. So you would have something like, if I behave myself well, me bene gero, I conduct myself well, or someone can conduct himself well, then it would be se bene geret. Or you could do it badly, of course. You could say like male or something like that. Then you can also use this to mean to manage a situation. So rem gerere, remember res rei rei rem re, res rem rebus res rebus. Here it means like to manage a situation, an affair, a business matter, any of those sorts of things. So just some more uses of gero gerere. Then we have the verb we've already run into, nubo nubere nupsi nuptus, where you marry someone and it takes the dative of the person married, but this one is only really used from the point of view of the woman. And we see some nouns come from this, like in a moment over here, while you have nuptii in the plural, it's a plural noun here, and this is like the wedding ceremony, and you have this adjective nuptialis, nuptiale, relating to marriage or nuptial. So that's where we get things in English. Your prenuptial agreements are things before the marriage, for example. Sometimes people just refer to marriage as nuptials. So, yeah. Then, from the man's perspective, though, you ducere someone in the accusative, the woman, in matrimonium. You lead her into marriage. It sort of expresses the asymmetry of this relationship, that you have two different ways to talk about it. Then we have tolo, tollere, sustuli, sublatus, to lift or to raise. And notice this starts off normal, tolo, tollere, but then for principal parts 3 and 4, you include, or you switch over rather, to stuff taken from ferro, ferre, tuli, latus here, with this sub stuck on the front. And subtuli sounds too weird, so the B turns into an S. So lots of strange things happening with these principal parts. You just need to remember that it changes. And if I lift someone up in praise, right, I might extol them. I extol the virtues of my cat because he is terrific. So I lift up those virtues with praise. But people often ask if toll, like your toll bridge or the toll that a troll demands, comes from this, and that does not. That comes comes through Latin, but actually comes from the Greek word for like a tax or a tribute, telos, and it comes, I think, all the way through Latin and then German into English. It's a long way to get there, so unrelated there. But this is to lift or raise. Then we have pereo perire, where you have eo ire itus, to go. But if you go through, pereo perire, that doesn't mean to go through like, oh, I go through the valley or I go through the sea in my submarine, but instead you go through your life, you die or perish, which you can sort of see the skeleton of that word pereo perire still in the English word perish. Then one that I've used for a bunch of conjugation practice, so shouldn't be too new, sentio, sentire, sensi, sensus, to sense, feel, realize, sense, all obviously comes from that. If you are a creature who is capable of thinking, perceiving, knowing their place in the world around them, we will call you sentient. I'm pretty sure I only became sentient around 7th grade. But yeah, there are lots of words coming from that. We have 2 little adverbs that don't really have any English things here, but you have heri for yesterday. You might remember that today is hodie and tomorrow is kras. You can procrastinare, to put something off to tomorrow. Well, then we also have nuper, recently or lately. So these, like a lot of little adverbs, don't do much in English. Then we have a couple nouns. You have chorus, which is what it sounds like, though it's coming probably through the Greek for a chorus, which is the group in a play or other performance, often doing like not just a song, but a song and dance number. Donum is a gift. We've seen this a lot. Limen, threshold. If something is subliminal, it is under the threshold of your perception. Or if something just sort of exists on the threshold or on the border between two things in English, we might call it liminal. Like being a teenager is sort of a liminal time between childhood and adulthood, for example, it's on the border. We have lumen, luminous, for light. You can think about words like illuminate, luminous, all those sorts of things. But then this one is fun. Mos mores is custom. And you use this to refer to a singular sort of custom there. And the Romans care particularly about the mos maiorum, the custom of their ancestors. And everything has to be justified in that way in this very traditional society. So the Romans always talk about the mos maiorum. Now, English derivatives here, well, notice the MOR, words like moral, come from this. And mores, the plural here, is straight into English. I guess that should technically be an O with a macron. Mores are your customs or your manners, your character in a sense. And we'll talk about the mores of a society, the sort of customs, the things they do. You don't use it in the sort of individual mores of a person sense that Latin likes to do, where you could talk about someone being a bad character, say they're like, ablative of description or something, malis moribus, with bad manners or something like that. But we pretty much use it in the more general custom sense and not the individual moral sense, though obviously our word moral comes from that. Already talked about nuptiae nuptiarum for wedding ceremony, and we have sol solis. And sol is in fact the proper name of our sun. We live in the sol system. And obviously words like solar, all the rest come from that. We have aequus, aequa, aequum in our adjectives, which is equal or fair. And if I do something fairly, well, you replace that asaum with the e, you get an adverb. Now, English, it's obvious that equal is related to this, but that actually comes from aequalis, which is the word that Latin uses for equal in the sense of, there's an equal amount of this or that. Like, I have an equal part of this as this other guy has. They are the same. And that's where equal comes from. But a sort of related word in English that you don't see as much is equity. If you do something with equity, you do something fairly. And this one has a little bit more of a sense of fairness or properness here, rather than the sense that everything is exactly equal. You can see how they overlap. If you get equal portions in something, well, then that's fair. So they can kind of do both, but this has more the sense of proper and fair. And so in equity, in English, one of its meanings is that, well, you do something, something is done fairly or with, justness and all of that. And if something that is done wrong, well, that is iniquity, because that E often shortens to an I. So iniquity is something that's done wrong, unfairly, cruelly. Not really cruelly, but just unjustly in that sense. So you might talk about, when we were not permitted to chew gum in class, that was a gross iniquity and abuse of power. It was something that was unfair. But Equalis is where you get more of the equal, so you can see how that L sticks around in the English there, where here you have no L. So then antiquus aum, well, ancient, old, obviously. Dives, divitis, this is a third declension noun that has this stem. It looks the same in all genders. And so notice how when you get a third declension adjective like this, well, you get, instead of masculine, feminine, neuter, you just get nominative and genitive. So de-wit is the stem for rich. I think we've seen in one of our readings before, in Latin, riches in the plural is divitii. You use a plural just like you do in English for riches, but not really great English words to hand there. So dubious, dubia, dubium is doubtful. You could be doubtful about a thing, or something could be doubtful if you're unsure about it. And we see the phrase sine dubio, without a doubt. Nuptialis we already talked about, and potens, potentis. This is a present participle, really, of possum posse, to be able. But you can see how that can mean powerful or having a capacity, and potent, all sorts of things like that come straight into